Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am officially back from my mini break and it's so nice to finally upload for you guys. I've been saving a lot of my videos for when I have time to do voiceover, and now I am slowly starting to go back into the paintings that I did while I was technically on vacation. This one is actually one of my most recent ones, and a huge shout out to Bella for letting me draw her. I will be linking her Instagram in the description, and also the link to my Instagram will be in the description as well. When I first started with this one, I didn't really have any direction for it. I just knew that I really wanted to draw this photo. I've seen this for a long time now, and it's taken me a while to finally get into it. And so when it came down to it, I didn't really have a set plan on how to approach it. I just knew that I loved the photo so much and I would try to recreate it as much as I can. I guess the one rule that I did for approaching this piece was to just have as much fun as I can with my art supplies. At around that time, because I was pre-filming a lot of things to do after vacation, I didn't really feel like I explored new things so much with my mediums, and so for this one I just really wanted to have fun with the mediums and the art supplies that I had. This red pencil I haven't used in a while because it isn't really great for painting. You'll see later on that it repels water. It sort of has a very waxy consistency to it, feels almost like a stiff crayon. But I've always loved sketching with it, and especially with portraits, I just really like rendering my portraits with it, and so I decided to just use it this time and figure everything else out after. I'm not even sure what this lead that I put in this pencil holder is. I just know that it's not that great for painting, but it's amazing to sketch with, and especially paired with a darker pencil on top, you'll see that it just really complements a darker lead pencil like the black wing that I will use after. When I did finally get to use my black wing, it was just the cherry on top of this portrait that I was already enjoying myself so much with. I really love adding the darker details on top of that very vibrant red. And what I also really like about the red, it's that it's very warm. It's almost like an orange, and so having the details on top done with a darker pencil really just brings everything together. And also, I think the reason why I enjoyed this sketch so much is that I did decide to film it as a real-time portrait, and so I wasn't really thinking about what it would look like as a painting. I wanted it to be a fully done portrait sketch, and so it's different from my other sketches where I really leave all the polishing out for the painting stage. With this, because I wanted to upload this as a real-time sketch, I did everything right from the beginning, and so that's why I think I ended up really loving this sketch so much as it stands by itself. And by the way, if you guys want to see a real-time sketch for it, just ask me in the comments below. I have so many videos I need to go through, but I always have real-time sketches, so let me know if that's something you guys want to see too. All of the brushes that I used for my painting are from my collaboration with Craft Tamil, which will be coming out next month, I think, and I'm so excited to officially introduce it to you guys. But yeah, I used almost all of them for this piece, and the paints that I used for watercolors are my Daniel Smith ones, and for my gouache I just went with a handful of most of the brands that I carry, and I'll just talk about them more when it comes to that stage. When it came to the painting stage, this was where I was just telling myself to enjoy the process more than plan it out in my head. And so I felt like the very best thing for me to do is to actually start with a very bright blue underpainting. When I did this, I did my Patreon painting, and I ended up really loving this blue color, and I was wondering why I don't use it so much in my portraits. And so I decided to go over everything with this very intense blue. I'm just thinking about that different color for the base of my portrait really set the tone for just exploration in this piece, not so much about the planning and layering my colors. I just wanted to see where it would go naturally. The second layer of color that I did on top of it is a very cool yellow, and since watercolor is very transparent, it just looks very green on top of that blue. And again, there's no planning at all behind this. I just really wanted to map out the highlights in the photo. I wanted to see what it will look like on top of that blue. I didn't even know what to do after that, but I just decided to do a red to fully finish the primary colors in the underpainting. And I also wanted to see if it would give me a workable portrait, which I have to say this red looks amazing on top of the other colors underneath. But I think it's just because when I started, I focused it on the very flushed parts of her face, so naturally it would work. If I was using dark to light colors, I would fully end up with more natural looking colors, but since that wasn't the plan for this painting, and I just really wanted to explore new styles and new colors on top of each other. For now, I just built up the values with my primary colors, and after I did that, I took what I think is baby Payne's gray and used it to map out the textures in her hair. Really wanted to bring out the volume of her butterfly locks. I think that's her hairstyle, but I really wanted to show the textures and the shape of them, so I wanted to map that out from the very beginning with my underpainting in watercolors. I'm not gonna lie, after that underpainting, I was feeling pretty proud of myself because I started in a different direction than how I normally would. And so for the next layers with gouache, I wanted to keep the colors mostly similar to what I see in the picture. And so there's a lot of very vibrant skin tones in there, but I also wanted to add some very warm colors for the highlights. And so it's a mix of more neutral and warmer looking colors instead of some very cool undertones for her skin tones. I wanted it to look very vibrant and warm and really bring out her cool makeup on top. And this is also the first time in a while that I've used my cute little flower mixing palette, which I've missed. It was just really fun. I don't know why, but that thing really just makes me happy when I see it, and it was just a nice touch to this whole process that I enjoyed so much. So the gouache layers, even though I was pretty sure of the colors that I was going to use on top, what really threw me off was how opaque I was going to have my gouache. Even though this is very similar to the process I had when I first started gouache and I was discovering the medium and comparing it a lot to watercolors, my more recent process with gouache was really just, I was really very different from watercolors, and so they don't really interact that much with this because the colors underneath are so vibrant and different from the colors that I wanted on top, especially for skin tones. It was hard for me to figure out how thick I had to paint the gouache so that it not really fully covers the underpainting, but more like complements the colors that were already underneath. These first few layers especially dried less vibrant than they looked before, but I surprisingly wasn't nervous at around this time. I was actually enjoying myself so much. I really liked the warm undertones of her face right next to the very blue underpainting, so at this point I was still enjoying myself. I also planned out having the lemon yellow as highlights for her hair because I really liked that look. Since I was trying to figure that out, I knew that I would have to add in the shadows first on her face, and so this is actually a more reddish brown that is again more of a challenge to figure out how much gouache I wanted to put in there, because too much would have covered the whole sketch, and that's why I really had to pull myself back in this initial layers of gouache on her face so that it still shows the sketch underneath and would still give me a good outline to work with. At this time I was really enjoying myself. I loved exaggerating the warm tones of the highlights, especially on her hair, because a lot of it is gonna be more about volume and getting the lines of it right. The ones that are hit by the highlights, I wanted it to be super vibrant and more about the colors and less about the structure. The part where I started to doubt myself was when I first started painting on her makeup, and that's because when I did my sketch, I was having so much fun with just doing the sketch that I didn't really think about the accuracy of her features underneath and how the values of her makeup would affect that. And so, especially with her eyes, I was really having a hard time with getting them to look even, because one eye was more in highlights, and because the light was hitting both of her eyes differently, I was having a hard time translating it onto my painting. And so this is where I was starting to falter a little bit. I still did the sketch. I didn't really stop at that point because I really enjoyed painting this process, even though around this time it was starting to get intimidating for me. I was enjoying the process more than I was scared of it. There came a point where I was already starting with the finer details on her face, even though I knew it was premature, and usually I would have everything else settled before I do this, but I was just really wanting to extend the process more. But I did know that I would have to plan it after, and I actually did. What I did was just take a photo of it and then try to do the process digitally as if I would do it with the actual painting, just trying to see what I could do with the painting so that it would reflect more of the photo and also would look more like it was my style. So my XP pen drawing tablet was such a great help with that. And so after I did that digital rework, I was able to finally picture where I was going to go with this painting. And after that, it was just smooth sailing from there again. With the help of my digital rework, I knew that I had to make her face look brighter, and so it's really just the same colors on top. I just had to add more opaque layers on top of it so the darker underpainting wouldn't show up so much underneath. And then once that's down, I also decided to add in some of the undertones for the shadows on her hair, and I started with some reds, but then I think later on I added some more blue on the lighter parts of the shadow, so it really separates itself from the warm colors of her hair that's hit by the highlights. I also wanted to make sure that I was adding those darker shadows to separate each of her locks, and so they don't blend into each other and lose the structure to them. But after that, it was just time for me to go back to my detail brush. This, by the way, is one of my favorite brushes to use now, and what I really did with it was finalize the details and the structures of her face. More of it was really adjusting the shadows to make her face look more symmetrical than I initially had it. Because my sketch wasn't as accurate, I needed to do some adjustments before I could really go ahead and finish this painting. It was so fun adding these brighter highlights on top of the painting because it really felt like it pulled everything together. I also just made sure that her lips reflected more of the photo. I think it was too pink the way I initially had it, and I wanted it to look more like the photo and how she has them in her makeup looks. This painting also made me appreciate just how well gouache dries and how evenly it dries, because while I was painting this, I didn't do almost any blending. It was just a lot of transition colors, but that's very hard to achieve. I feel like with other mediums, those colors wouldn't dry together so well as it does with gouache, and I really ended up liking her skin tone, which is something that even though I'm used to drawing it, is something that I always want to get right, especially because a lot of it is in highlight, but also there's some key points that are actually in shadow, and those colors were harder, I think, to get than the ones that are hit by the light. So this sort of halo of shadow that's around her forehead and just around her face was a lot harder for me to get. I think I used some of my olive green from my Paul Rubens opaque watercolors. They're opaque watercolors, but I used them more as gouache, which I didn't actually like that paint so much. That's why I didn't do a review on them. Most of the colors I used here are from my Holbeins, really. I think the red that I used was from my Memory gouache, which I also love. I just think it's maybe a little bit pricey, but it's one of my more opaque gouache, and so I used it for this piece. And then I also used my black from that same brand, which is just so great to use because it's super black and it's very opaque, which is hard to get with gouache. I think even my Holbein Jet Black isn't as dark as this. And it's also very watery, which is the only paint in my whole Holbein collection that I didn't like. So it was great to have my Memory Black for this piece because a lot of the colors in shadow are very dark. You can see more of those blue highlights for this now, which were red before, that I then covered so that it will make the black lines on top pop, and I ended up really liking the effect. Most of the process after this is really just me doing the details. I think I skipped a lot of the hard part by doing some of the planning halfway through digitally with my drawing tablet, and so I could really just enjoy this piece. This is one of my favorite paintings that I've ever done, and thankfully Bella likes it. Don't forget to follow her Instagram, which I will be linking in the description. And also, if you guys are interested in my brushes, they will be fully announced in August, but I will have the link to them on the description as well. If you want to see real-time paintings and sketches, I do them every month on Patreon, and the link to that will be in the description as well. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons for supporting me. You guys are the absolute best, and I will be seeing you guys again soon.